Welcome, everyone, to our July Unread Book Club. This month, we are discussing the general theory of love, a general theory of love, and we're going to dive deep into love and physiology, the nervous system, and different layers of our brain, different layers of how we experience love in the body, and see what we can get out of that conversation. But
I
before
think we
we dive deep into that, um, I would just like to take a few minutes, maybe a couple of minutes for all of us to be on the same page. If you are sitting down and in a place where you can settle yourself, if you are watching the replay or driving, just maybe focus on your breath. But if you're here with us and are sitting down, feel free to close your eyes and or have a soft gaze. And we are just putting our awareness on the breath, not changing the rhythm or anything like that. We're just aware of the inhale and the exhale. And allow yourself to relax into the core of your being with every inhale and exhale, letting the worries of the day to be left behind and any anxieties of the future to be left behind, and just relax into yourself. And see if you can allow yourself to reach the ground that is observing, to reach that space in yourself that is always here. And once you have felt that, once you touch that ground in yourself, invite it into the space, allow it to rise up within your body, allow it to be brought to this space right here, the space that you're currently occupying in your body, the space that you're occupying in your room, the space that we're occupying together right here. And whenever you feel ready, feel free to open your eyes. Or if they were open, you can loosen that soft gaze and bring your awareness to the space around you and to each other. Alhamdulillah. Thank you all for being here. I am I am excited to dive in this this topic. Um, and I will pass the mic to Antoine because this was Antoine's pick. And he can maybe tell us a little bit more about it and about maybe why you picked it, Antoine, and we can take it from there.
Absolutely, bro. Thank you for like bringing us in and getting us settled into the space, into ourselves. Welcome everyone to tonight's session of the Unread Book Club, and we're diving into this transformative text about the general theory of love, looking at bridging the gap between hard science and human emotion. Um, I think I chose this book because I wanted to look at this year a theme of like what are the different ideas about love and how are different traditions and the sciences and things seeing love? How does it relate to our bodies? Our body just this hardware? Is love just chemistry and neurons? Or, what's really going on? Is God pouring himself, herself through us? What does science, what does the religions, the different traditions and cultures have to say about this subject of love and how we relate to God, how we relate to one another, how we relate to reality itself? And so this book is just another series of data points that we can use to kind of sift through what society is telling us about love and cross-referencing it with what we feel about love ourselves. Um, about the authors, this book was co-authored by three eminent psychiatrists from the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine, Dr. Thomas Lewis, Fari Amini, and Richard Lannon. What makes their collaboration so unique is that they did not just look at love through an abstract or clinical lens. Dr. Lannon actually founded the Affective Disorders program at UCSF, specifically to integrate deeper psychological concepts with the emerging biology of the brain. Together, these three clinicians set out to reconcile what poets, artists, and philosophers have known for thousands of years about the human heart with what neuroscientists tells us about our physiology. Um, and I think some cool jumping off points and quotes that I pulled from the book just to kind of throw out there and get a sense of where they're coming from is this quote about identity and love, which says, who we are and who we become depends in part on who we love. Thought that was cool. Another one is about limbic regulation. It says adults remain social animals. They continue to require a source of stabilization outside of themselves. Another one is about emotional healing, which says the first part of emotional healing is being limbically known. Um, and Another one is limbic revision, which states that in a relationship, one mind revises another, one heart changes its partner. And those are some jumping off points or some leaping off points that we can like dive into, unless someone else has something else that they'd like to just like point out concerning something they've seen in the book or something they're aching to say about these authors or this book. Otherwise, I can read something that I have also. Oh,
Yeah, one of I love the introduction and the idea of it, right? Because as you and I know, we get into these conversations about nervous system, body, unseen realities of things, and more abstract ideas. And I think it is cool to also, for me, right, to look at this concept of love, and even in a more broader sense, this inner experience, right? In a way that doesn't necessarily look over the physiology, right? And have it be just this internal um, architecture that is completely existing in abstraction, right? But rather giving the physiology um, the right place, right? Because after all, it is literally the only medium of which we get to experience all of this, right? Like there's no escape of that as far as being here on this planet and experiencing life in that way. So I think that is a cool thing to make sure that that's is the physiology aspect of it is part of the mix, right? Um, so I'm excited about that. One of the things as far as like impression goes when it comes to the book, um, I was in the beginning I was a little bit um, you know, I wasn't too sure in which direction the book is going to be written. Like I didn't know if they're going to come at it from a completely um, like materialistic, I guess, or materialist view of saying like, hey, everything is just pretty much um, a every feeling, everything is just a hodgepodge of chemicals and neurons that get to be fired up in your brain, um, and losing the mystery, right? Because that's that aspect. Like I feel within myself protective over, I guess, right? But I like that they pointed that out and they named it, right? So they named the poets, they named poetry, they named the mystery, they named the fact that even after all of this research, even after all of what we know, there's still a zone, a space that is beyond what we know, right? There's still kind of like the black hole. There's the event horizon that's after that point where that's it, it's unknowable. Um, and I appreciated that, right? Because it made the information that they were given a little bit softer. It made it land in a softer way, or it made me think of it in other terms that I can actually grapple with. So that part I enjoyed. Some of the more, I guess, research and scientific ways, like doing research on whatever, like animals and doing this kind of stuff. I didn't necessarily enjoy that part too much, right? I can see how they were building up the story. They're building up in order to make sure that things land correctly. Um, So yeah, I think I would leave it with that. I think there's a balance of how I interacted with the book, but overall the topic itself is very intriguing. Um, you know, the role of physiology in how it shapes our inner experience, and what effect.
Totally agree, bro. Beautifully expressed. Um, I one of the reasons that this book came about also is that, like, I don't know if you all hear about this loneliness epidemic happening in the world. So many people, different ages, in a time when we're all have the possibility to be so connected. They say that loneliness has never been as great as it is now. And I know that they say loneliness is also one of the main contributors of things like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. And, you know, yeah, this book, at the heart of it is basically arguing that our nervous systems are not self-contained, that we possess like an open loop architecture where we need each other to co-regulate, just like when we were babies. Maybe we can cover it with some level of intellectualization and emotionality and think we might be able to spiritually bypass it based on our relationships with God or whatever our higher power is. But there is no getting beyond, in my opinion, this idea that, we need each other. You know, if not always, definitely, you know, when we first get here at least. Um, if no one has nothing to say, I have this quote I'd love to read on page. What page do I have it on? Because I don't want to hold the spot, but like it starts on page. I guess I'll start with the low number page. It's 48, paragraph 2. Would you be able to share your screen, bro?
Yeah, let me share it and make sure it's on the same page that is on the PDF.
Okay. And I'm gonna jump in with my computer so I can also have a.
So this is page 48 on the PDF.
Yeah, so is that the page you want, or are you going by the page that
Sorry, y'all.
It's all good.
Did I that noise? Did y'all hear that? Okay. Yeah, the PDF page, bro. Paul.
Wait, you're gonna have to mute.
I
Okay.
did. I didn't do it. Sorry. But yeah, the PDF page. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you see the page?
I cannot. Can you guys see it? Or is it because it could just be my computer?
Yes, I can see it.
You can see it? Okay. I'm just gonna go to
go ahead and read.
yeah, I'm gonna read from my PDF. Okay, so I'm starting at the second paragraph on page 48. I thought this was pretty cool. All right, it says the first part of emotional healing.
Wait, let me stop you because
Okay.
this is not the page then. Because
Oh,
I'm on
sorry.
page 48.
My bad, my bad. Did I put the wrong page? And it's really page 148? Okay, yeah, it's page 148.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
no good. Yep.
Right? Yeah. Second paragraph, then the first. Okay, perfect. Okay. The first part of emotional healing is being limbically known. Having someone with a keen ear catch your melodic essence. A
Mhm.
child with emotionally hazy parents finds trying to know himself like wandering around a museum in the dark. Almost anything could exist within its walls. He cannot ever be sure of what he senses. For adults, a precise seer's light. Did I read that right? For adults, a precise seer's light can still split the night, illuminate treasures long thought lost, and dissolve many fearsome figures into shadows and dusk. Those who succeed in revealing themselves to another find the dimness receding from their own vision of self. One more time. Those who succeed in revealing themselves to another find the dimness receding from their own visions of self. Like people awakening from a dream, they slow. What's the word? Slow off the accumulated, ill-fitting trappings of unsuitable lives.
Slough. Slough.
Thank you. Then the mutual fund manager may become a sculptor, or vice versa. Some friendships lapse into dilapidated irrelevance as new ones deepen. The city dweller moves to the country, where he feels finally at home. As limbic clarity emerges, a life taking takes form. It's very poetic. Um, so I'll continue. I'm just gonna. Was it to that page? Limbic regulation balanced through relatedness. Certain bodily rhythms fall into synchrony with the ebb and flow of a day and night. These rhythms are termed circadian, from the Latin for about a day. A more fitting appellation is circumlucent, because they revolve around light as surely as Earth. Human physiology finds a hub not only in light, but also in the harmonizing activity of nearby limbic brains. Our neural architecture places relationships at the crux of our lives. Where blazing and warm, they have the power to stabilize. When people are hurting and out of balance, they turn to regulating affiliations, groups, clubs, pets, marriages, friendships, masseuses, chiropractors, the internet, all carry at least the potential for emotional connection. Together, those bonds do more good than all the psychotherapists on the planet. I'll stop it there. What do you guys think? What do you ladies and guys think?
Uh, shall I go first? Is there anyone else? Okay. Uh, so I love what they're saying here, and this is something that I have personally experienced. As you were reading this, the image that was coming to my head were memories of me and my friend talking, and how we see each other in just listening to each other. And then after this conversation, we are also talking about how it felt to be heard and seen by each other, because that's just what we do. But another part of it that I was remembering is this is something only 3 psychiatrists could write together, because this is something that I also experienced as in counseling in both sides of the seat. And when you do kind of hold that space to see someone and hear someone, even if you don't fully understand them, like you don't meet each other, you're just in the space together, and you are this willing participant, open enough to engage with them and not kind of hold any defenses. That's it. Like you don't even have to get each other in any way. That forms a bond that then slowly builds a relationship over time. And I think the two aspects that come in is, one is time, and one though is physical presence. And that's the thing that really did come. I haven't reached the part of the book that's gotten to love yet. So it's just at the emotional and the neural stuff, the brain stuff. And I'm just getting chapter 5. So I haven't gotten to how they get to that point. But for me, it's just what I have learned is somehow I think there's a way in which I grew up with the internet from like the 4th grade onwards. That's the world that I've been exploring and kind of finding out about the world, and like, oh, there's more than just what's around me. But I think because I explored the world like that, I kind of there were years of missing a gap. And this book is kind of telling me that limbic connection might be grounded in physical, in person, voice activated, touch activated exchanges. And that is a connection. I don't know where it gets to love or anything else, but I think that's almost a big part of the light and the healing and all of that. I'll leave it there.
Beautifully expressed, beautifully expressed. Thank you so much. I totally agree with everything you were touching on there. Like this relationship between like, yeah, being online even. It provides something, but it can never give what being in person gives. It just it's just something else there. And yeah, I like this distinction you made between being met fully, like the co-witnessing of one another, or not really being able to be met, but like someone being able to have enough capacity to hold space for you. That's like a whole thing right there. Like you don't have to like know exactly what the person's talking about, but you to be able to witness them and hear them is nurturing and in and of itself. Um, Anybody else?
Yeah. Gerald, do you have anything you want to say? Yeah? No? Yeah? No? Make us smile.
You can go ahead, Paul.
I've read. I'm overread. Period. I've read too much in my life, and I've forgotten most of it. But um, these psychiatrists happen to be at a place where I'm actually pretty familiar. I lived in San Francisco more or less for 50 years, and and I've been in and out of psychotherapy for probably enough to put a couple of people through graduate school. Um, uh, I agree with what they say, but I also realize from my own life, not by choice, but by circumstance, most of the face-to-face and body-to-body contact that many people find, a great addition to life, a great, even a purpose to life, even a driving force of life, and which I thought so. It was when I was younger. Uh, but I also realize that there's a deeper resonance that goes beyond our face-to-face and body-to-body contact. I don't disagree. I think that sex and transcendence are uh, two legs, and you need both of them to sort of hop along. Unless you and hopping on one foot alone doesn't really make for an easy hike. Um, but but my own life is I've been alone most of my life, and I have there. I'm not saying I'm happy with. I know that like if I got a stroke and couldn't get to the phone, I would die because nobody would call me to just check up on me. I mean, I'm that alone. I'm very isolated now, so particularly since my wife died a couple of years ago, and I live out in the woods. 5 acres. I don't have any neighbors that will check in on me. They should, but they don't. And I can check in on them too, and I've tried to be as active as I can be, but you know, um, I also well aware that something untoward would happen, and that would be if I can't reach out, nobody's going to reach in. And also when you're older, it's harder to make significant friendships. You can make friendships, but people are incredibly tied up in their own story and their own unhappiness about what they've done with their life or haven't done with their life. Well, I'm not unhappy at all, but I'll tell you the reason why is from the very get-go, early on me, is that there was something that loved me that was beyond my inadequate parents and beyond my inadequate friends and beyond my own inadequacies, having been raised inadequately. That's a good word, inadequate. But but there is something. But I still realize that there was this profound loving reality that is at the core of the world, not just the core of our biology, not just the core of Homo sapiens. I mean, we're horrible people. I mean, Americans are incredibly ugly because look at the nonchalance in which we blow up and destroy other people's lives. and we don't even think about it. If it happened to us, we would freak out. Well, look what happened. 9/11 happened. Look what happened to the whole, we, completely, just trash our own future and our own treasure, just and create incredible havoc for people. Uh, so America, even though we're in some ways protected, is ugly. I mean, we are an ugly people, and we have to understand that dark side in order to really understand the depths of love and joy and beauty and grace. And so, yeah, so you can love, but you can love the source of love. Jalaluddin Rumi, I visited him once, and I expected, a great, powerful presence. And what I was thrown into was an abyss, a complete, utter abyss of indifference. And that is the other side of love, is this incredible, profound, ever spiraling, transcendent, you can't talk about it, emptiness, and a beauty beyond beauty. But I don't need to. And I wrote an essay in which I talk about the inadequacies of the book as much as I talk about how good they are. And the inadequacies really have to do with just the material space. That they are basically psychiatrists that think, well, we're animals, and this is how animals work, and I think it's fine. Yeah, animals love, right? Look at your dog. Dogs love, cats, even cats love, But uh, we're so much more and so much less. And we really need to, I really want to emphasize that, but I don't need to say any more right now.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for sharing, bro. And I see that Osama's hand is up.
Yeah. Um, yeah, good. Thank you, Paul, for for a beautiful expression, and Muna as well. Like part of reading, when you're reading that segment um about being in a physical space, right? And what that does to our nervous system, or at least the limbic part of our brain, right? And our nervous system. Um, yeah, and there's something that is so real about another person's presence, right? That can go in either way, really. So even just in the context of, for myself, let's say doing work by myself in the house versus going to a cafe, that in itself does something, right? To what I feel about connection, to what I feel about the space, to my relationship with myself in the space, to my relationship with myself around the people that I may know and may not know. But I think a good point that Mona brought up is the the effect of actual presence of somebody who's in the same room as you, who can actually regulate. Like there's a different weight to somebody being present versus somebody being physically there but absent. Right now, I don't know in the book if they talk about this kind of distinction. And I think this kind of distinction is somewhat closer to what Paul is talking about, that there is at the same time this inner, I mean, subjectivity is completely lonely and alone. there's no way around subjectivity being other than alone, right? It's completely by itself. So, which is, I guess, one leg of what Paul was talking about, while the other leg is as much of this subjectivity that can be translated or not even translated, that can be emitted in the same space as somebody else. However, in a state of presence, like real presence, where I think, in the book, they were talking about looking somebody in the eye, like actually looking somebody in the eye, and what that means as far as, where even the term comes in of like eyes being the windows to the soul, all that kind of stuff, where in reality, or not in reality, like in the physiology that's happening, there's a real regulation that's taking place because part of it is regulating the same breath, right? Sometimes we don't even know that we're doing that, right? But if we're conscious of it, we can do it in a way where if we're there for somebody, we can pay attention to the breathing and regulate in that same way, right? Which is in so many different modalities is actually a practice that people do, right? They look and their idea, their perception is aware of the breathing that's happening on the other side. So I do see the effect in real life, in person, and also at the same time, the weight, quote unquote, of subjectivity being completely at the mercy of the presence. Like it's such an interesting thing. It's being completely hidden, right? Yeah, I think both of these two things came up as you were reading from that section.
Uh, I do have a response about the subjectivity being lonely, though. Don't we, at least in a human consciousness, we do have a way to observe ourselves or listen to ourselves. It's it's kind of a trick of the mind, not really always present. We can choose to do it. And I think counselors are usually trained to do it just because they have to be aware of the ways in which their own stuff's coming up. But I think there is a way that we can observe ourselves. I think poets, philosophers, researchers use it as well. And I think when there is a relationship of that love between that observer and us, is when we feel that cosmic, what Paul was talking about, of that transcendent, and it is kind of an abyss because it's almost like with ourselves, but not ourselves, because that part is never doing anything or saying anything, just kind of watching. And sometimes when that becomes the critic, that's when we feel truly alone and like forced into being a certain way. But there's a way in which that I think when we're growing up, that's just almost something we're creating. Maybe we don't even do it. I remember myself as a kid kind of watching myself almost, but there's no face to it. There's nothing to it. These days, it's me. It's almost like future me, a past me, or older me, or a figment of me. And I think becoming a parent to ourselves kind of is that maturity of growing up and taking responsibility for our own feelings. Maybe that's where the cosmic love transcendent thing is.
No, that's a great point. Absolutely. Like right on the dot. 100%. There is this space of self-observation, and then there's that gap that allows for some kind of a healthy detachment, I guess, right? in order to witness. That's what I mean, right? In order to witness oneself. Um, yeah, so I think when I was bringing that up, I'm alone, not necessarily in the sense of internal loneliness that's taking place, but rather a it's very interesting to describe it. Like, um, yeah, so like it's at the mercy of translation. It's at the mercy of finding words to describe the inner reality of what's taking place, you know?
I noticed that when they were talking about the neocortex and the limbic, and I'm like, oh, that's who's oppressing me. The neocortex, that's making me say all these things. I felt that tension.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, I love what you guys are talking about. Let me first read something that Paul just put in. Let's see. He wrote that two modes of knowing, emotion versus intellect, parallel. Ibn Arabi distinction between al, reason, and qalb, heart. Love has architecture, echoes Ibn Arabi claim that love follows the grammar of the divine names. All models collapse when not grounded in reality, mirrors Ibn Arabi's critique of purely relational metaphysics. Need for both evidence and
Rational.
intuition. Oh, thank you. Rational metaphysics. Need for both evidence and intuition parallels the Akbarian balance of Kush unveiling, and disciplined reasoning. Human experience as data aligns with Ibn Arabi's insistence that the human being is the macrocosm containing all realities. That's pretty cool. I wanted to say something about all the things that you all were talking about, but I think you've pretty much covered it when you spoke about the witnessing and transcendence and um, yeah, the distinction between that voice that's speaking in our head that we call our thoughts, but we don't know if they're ours or not. There's just thoughts happening. And I think thinking is maybe more intentional, but I don't confuse the awareness that is observing the thoughts or the thinking with being me. I mean, with the thoughts being me. There's a level of awareness that sits back and watches and listens to these thoughts. And like, if I'm the one thinking, then who's the one listening? There is a level of this relationship. I think I find in this quote in the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads, wherever it is at. It says is one of my favorite ones. Curving back on myself, I create again and again. And I find that that's what's happening when people go into the zone or into the flow state or have the transcendental experience. This pure awareness that we already always are, that's always sitting just beyond our narrative of self, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, is always on the throne. It's just that it's covered with our everyday always happening, and our perception gets completely tangled up in the always phenomenal existence in reality. And when we transcend or sometimes have a crisis, a breakdown, or breakthrough, that awareness that's sitting in the background has its moment. We fall to that base of self-awareness. Um, so anyway, that's how I relate to much of what you all were just describing, and I think it's amazing. I wanted to read page 126 in the PDF, chapter 6, the third paragraph down, that starts at the limbic transmission of attractors.
Say the page again. One.
I think 126, I think I said. Let me see. Yes, page 126. Okay, you there, bro?
Yeah.
Okay. The limbic transmission of attractors renders personal identity partially malleable. The specific people to whom we are attracted provoke a portion of our everyday neural activity. In the vistas of imagination, the self is a proud ship of state, subject to the winds and tides of circumstance, certainly, but bristling with masts and spars and beams, fairly bursting with solidity. We would scarcely imagine that identity could be as fluid as the seas that supposed self rides upon. E. E. Cummings paints a lover's power to render identity in this way. Your homecoming will be my homecoming. Myselves go with you, only I remain, a shadow, phantom, effigy, or seeming, an almost someone, always who's none. A none who, till there and your returning, spends the forever of his loneliness, dreaming their eyes have opened to your morning, feeling their stars have risen through your skies. The reach of limbic attractors stretches beyond the moment. The sine qua non of a neural network is its penchant for strengthening neural patterns in direct proportion to their use. The more often you do or think or imagine a thing, the more probable it is that your mind will revisit its prior stopping point. When the circuits are sufficiently well worn, such that thoughts fly down them with little friction or resistance, that mental path has become a part of you. It is now a habit of speech, thought, action, attitude. Ongoing exposure to one person's attractors does not merely activate neural patterns in another, it also strengthens them. Long-standing togetherness writes permanent changes into a brain's open book. In a relationship, one mind revises another. One heart changes its partner. This astounding legacy of our combined status as mammals and neural beings is limbic revision, the power to remodel the emotional parts of the people we love as our attractors activate certain limbic pathways and the brain's inexorable memory mechanism reinforces them. Who we are and who we become depends in part on whom we love. They used to say this thing at my university, Marshall International University. Neurons that fire together wire together. And they talked all about how the pruning of neurons and the resetting of neurological pathways sort of act as near as like the heart wire of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs. Um, and I don't know, I feel like this whole space here not only says that same thing, but tells us that the person next to me, even more so the person who I'm sharing a love relationship with, affects me in a way that could completely prune or restructure neurological pathways in my brain, enforcing or revising my feelings, my thoughts, my emotions, my belief systems. I think that's incredible. There was this professor at UC Berkeley, I think his name was Lakoff, and he talked about metaphor theory. And when he was speaking about metaphor theory, it was this idea in it that the more times we come in contact with something, the more times we hear something, these things are secretly easing past our permeable membrane and creating micro changes in the way we relate to reality and ourselves. You know? Anyway, what do y'all have to say about all that?
I want to see if Gerald has wants to jump in. Feel free at any point, Gerald and Linda and RM. Just want to make sure not coming in hot with, you know. So at any point, feel free to raise your hand as part of the react buttons at the bottom and or add to the chat. Um, but what we'd have to say about this is, oh my God, the full moon is insane right now. Let's just, yo. Okay, sorry. Um, wow. So
Can you show us? Can you?
it's hard. Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
Okay.
I've seen it like in between the trees and the
Oh, I love
oof,
the magic.
oof. Well, whenever you are, you know, whenever it gets time, like nighttime, go outside or something. Um, yeah, yeah. This what you read makes total sense, and also it's you see how the double-edged sword of this quality that is within us, that is inherent within us, right? As far as using it for discipline, right? Learning a new language, learning a new instrument, learning a new skill, whatever it is, that with more repetition and hopefully in the right order, right, it can become something that your body it can become quote unquote natural to you, right? It become a second thing. Just like for me, let's say moving to America and having to learn English as a second language. In the beginning, translating in my head between Arabic and English, and little by little, oh, and then I was like, wait a second, I'm not doing the translating anymore. And then after that, I'm like, wait a second, I'm dreaming in English now, like getting to that point, right? But it's speaking to the point of what you just read, and in another way also the use of mantra or inner dialogue, um, the use of um, these things that we feed ourselves through memory, let's say, or through the thinking part of the brain. What is it called again? Something centric,
Neocortex.
neocortex, right? So and having that play an effect on the limbic part and vice versa. So now there's some kind of communication that's taking place that we're aware of. And at the same time, the other side of the coin is when I am stuck in a negative loop, right? In a thought, and now that thought and that imagination is making my limbic or emotional side be triggered again, changing my physiology, changing my heart rate, changing my stress levels off of something that is not really happening right now, but just based off of my imagination, and having that be running in a loop. And also in ways of which hypnotizing oneself into a behavior or into a way of being that is not really positive to them in any way, but it's been repeated in so many ways that it's really happening as a one is hypnotizing oneself in that way. And it is so easy to do because we, or I for myself, it's so much easier to believe my own voice inside of my head, right? Even though it may not be mine at all, right? It might be something from outside or whatever, but I'm hearing it in my own tone. And now that groove in the neurological pathways is becoming deeper and deeper. So I think this is something that is kind of always good to know, to be reminded of, to see how new patterns and new habits form, and also to use it consciously in a way that can, God willing, hopefully, put oneself in a trajectory that is um, for their own benefit, like something that they can actually grow from, which we see within mystical traditions as something that is utilized, right? So, even the whole, as much as I don't necessarily agree with the model, right? But, the disciple student kind of relationship where the student traditionally would have to live in the same area as the teacher, the master, right? Because you would have to be in proximity, you'd have to be in the same space in order to absorb all of the so-called knowledge or the attributes, the way of living, the way, you know, you're being colored, you're being dyed through the same presence and the shared presence as the quote unquote teacher. Same thing with learning instruments and stuff like that and music. You would want to traditionally it's being in the same space. And it's for me, it's speaking about what you just read, right? It's reinforcement of the neurological pathways in such a way that now it becomes really established um, within the physiology and how that affects the the personality level and all that different ways. So that's what I have to say about that.
Beautifully expressed, bro. I see some things going on in the comments. Let's see. Uh, okay, looks like. Oh, okay, no problem, Joe. Good to see you, man. Thank you for joining us. It's been difficult at first because I did not read the book. There's no
Yes.
problem. That is difficult because you didn't read the book and stuff.
I really enjoyed what we've been talking about recently, and like I said, since the second reading particularly makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining
Absolutely.
us.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Um, let's see. Other things in the comments. Okay, RM. Okay. Where is this?
You want me to read
Oh,
it?
yeah, yeah, if you don't mind, bro. I can't see it.
Okay. So I see Paul uh, put some stuff and we'll get back to that. Um, RM said, also for me, I have felt the intense love the day I became a mom. And I can tell that happened physiologically. My mind literally changed after I gave birth. Yeah. And then Paul said, there's a lymphoid system. Wait until you are a grandparent. Yeah. And then RM mentions again, I recently learned about Aspen Grove. Above the ground, these trees, Aspen Grove, above the ground, these trees look separated, but underground, their roots are interconnected. This discussion really reminded me of that concept. And Paul affirms, saying, yes, we are all in one that is usually unconscious. Absolutely. So beautiful. And then Paul earlier shared, oh, you read the two modes. Paul shared, identity emerges through relationality. The authors show identity forming through parental resonance. Ibn Arabi teaches identity emerges through divine relationality. The real is the mirror in which the servant sees him or herself. The heart learns through unveiling, not deduction. Uh, Holmesian deduction fails. Ibn Arabi says true knowledge arises through unveiling, kashf, not reasoning backward. And three, dual sources of being, nature and nurture. DNA and experience parallels Ibn Arabi's pairing of fitra, or innate disposition, takween, or formation through events. Oh, yeah, DNA and experience, I guess, paralleling these two things, the innate disposition and the formation through events. That fitra, I guess, is part of the DNA. and takween or formation is the same as nurture. Early impressions shape destiny. Neural pruning resembles Ibn Arabi's idea that early states, ahwal, shape the soul's unfolding. So this is kind of like growing up, what one's upbringing may do, kind of like in the book, how they're talking about one's upbringing, what is that will do to the unfolding in later life. Being known precedes self-knowledge. A child becomes real through being known by the parent. Ibn Arabi says the servant knows himself only through divine knowing. That's an interesting topic. Familiarity governs attraction. Attachment makes familiar patterns feel like love. Ibn Arabi says the soul is drawn to what reflects its own divine name. Yeah, beautiful. Is there any of these that you would want to speak on, Paul? Anything that you would want to elaborate on?
Yeah, well, um, what I posted a little bit was my notes that I took for the chapters, and when Antoine read from chapter 7, I just went into my notes on chapter 7. Uh, the the first parts of the notes, the part we just read, were the things that the chapter and Ibn Arabi are in concert with. Uh, by the way, I've kind of decided to become an advocate for Akbarian studies for you guys for some reason. And sometime when we're not recorded, I'll give you my story about that. So the other two posts are, again, my notes. And these notes were developed specifically saying, okay, we know what they said, but they didn't say it well enough, or there's another way to see it that is more expansive. And there's no, so we don't have any deep disagreement with what these psychiatrists said, except they're basically dualistic. And Ibn Arabi is, if anything, oriented towards the unity of existence, which happens to be my bias too. So that's why I'm citing him so often, because that's the reality. I mean, your lover may desert you. The love of your life is not going to last your life unless the love of your life is life itself. And then you don't have to worry about dying because there is no death. But that means you got to love life, which means you got to love it in all of its ways it presents itself. And it doesn't always present itself in pleasant ways. I mean, a lot of life is hard for folks, and it hurts. And there's ugliness, and there's nastiness, and there's people you try to be nice to, and they turn around and find a way that when you show them vulnerability, they use it to hurt you. They use it they use it to humiliate you. And suddenly your vulnerability is a source of your humiliation. I'm talking just recent for me. Idiots that I know. I mean, yeah, I show you my an area that I'm vulnerable in, and then you use it to hurt. And that is not nice. But people do crap like that all the time, So I wouldn't, I don't, I can still be vulnerable. I haven't lost anything. I just learned that some people are hurting so much that they enjoy hurting other people rather than dealing with not hurting, being so hurtful themselves. And there are lots of us out there who are like that. We're so bound up, so beaten down. Okay. But so emotional identity as neural versus ontological. I don't know, is a big word, it's a metaphysical word. And it's almost from my point of view, if we ever well, actually, next month we're probably going to talk about Ibn Arabi with a little more depth, because that's that you're going to do Sufism and Taoism, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, which, by the way, I'm going to probably try to get a couple people to join you guys, because I had a reading class on that a couple of years ago, and I'm going to call those people up and say, well, you've read the book, you might as well get in on this discussion. But it's a good book. It's a good book to introduce Ibn Arabi to a degree. I have it's Itzetsu. I love this guy. I really did. I mean, I read everything I could possibly get on him when I discovered him back like 50 years ago. And I've been, you know, uh, followed him closely, dug up his biography, found out that he was raised in a Zen monastery. His father was head of a Zen, some kind of Zendo. Actually, it was not a temple in Japan. I don't really know the correct perimeters of this, but he grew up. He and his wife wrote a wonderful book on aesthetics, which I had a copy of it once. I know I don't have it any longer. That's some really, Tsitsu is a wonderful guy, but that's next week. I mean, next month.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for sharing, man. Well,
Yeah.
much appreciation. I have one more reading I'd like to read on page 88, chapter 5, Gravity's Incarnation, first 3 paragraphs.
Okay, let me pull that up. Hopefully it's a little shorter. We have 15 minutes left.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Page 88.
Yes, page 88. And what am I doing the whole page? Let me see. First 3 paragraphs. Yes. Okay. 5, Gravity's Incarnation, how memories stores and shapes love. Memory is a small word that contains entire worlds. With the mammal exertion of will, anyone can conjure up a vision of places and people long since destroyed by the passage of time, whose impressions remain encoded along winding synaptic paths. Somehow, the immensity of the past is dormant within, and parts weaken at our command. But memory is more. It defines, creates, and holds a person's mental world together. As a pioneering psychologist of the nervous system, Ewald Herring saw it. Memory collects the countless phenomena of our existence into a single whole. And as our bodies would be scattered into the dusk of their component atoms if they were not held together by the attraction of matter, so our consciousness would be broken up into as many fragments as we have lived seconds, but for the binding and unifying force of memory. Heron's declaration was prophetic. Every individual lives as a spectral vapor in the neural machine. His thoughts, dreams, feelings, and ambitions, the effervescent outcome of intricate signals flowing among billions of neurons. The stability of an individual mind, what we know as identity, exists only because some neural pathways endure. The plasticity of the mind, its capacity to adapt and learn, is possible only because neuronal connections can change. The physiology of memory determines the fate of those malleable nodes. It lies at the heart of who we are and who we can become. I found this incredibly fascinating. Given, my relationship or with my mom, and she struggled through dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that, and seeing how the personality changes over time. And it was a very interesting thing because, at first you don't know what's going on. You feel the person's personality changing, but you haven't caught on that something like that is happening. So you get to witness like what this person, this identity is different from the one I know, and yet something, someone of what I know is still there. You know, I think there's this poem by Lord Tennyson. He says, "Men may come and men may go, but I go on forever." And in my feeling, he was talking about this quality of isness that no matter how old he gets or how he changes, this isness that's present. And I wonder how that isness, what that isness is as it relates to the hardware of our nervous system, of our brain, of our neurological pathways. Is this human body just this giant receptor of this infinite primordial energy pouring through this hardware? First as a software that is this isness or node of existence that is our somehow some Atman or some soul, some individual um, node of this infinite wave that existence or consciousness is pouring through this hardware we call a nervous system and enacting a software we call memory that holds together the narrative of our personality. Like, is this what this is pointing at? What do you guys think?
I think then we're going to have to talk about at least the two ways that we are defining our theory of reality, because Paul is probably going to say, well, it's not the hardware. And then we have to go into like idealistic ways of looking at it, or, it differs from where we come at it, because they are coming as psychiatrists talking about neuronal. And I'm just like, really? Is that what it is? Because I can look at it socially, and identity is just something I keep telling myself. And now there's an identity that has arrived in this room that might never come on again if I never attend this again, or if I never bring this to another space. So I don't know if we can get at one thing there, but I do love what this is saying. Like, can we feel the wonder of how something that is done by our nervous system gives us this experience, someone else another kind of experience? And also, all of this is changeable apparently, and we can actually play around with certain kind of people for certain amounts of time and have particular experiences. That's the thing that I really, really love. And I also feel like that's like there is, I love that it is a book called General Theory of Love, but I feel like it's pushing it too to the positive side and not seeing that, hey, okay, this change is possible. When we look around us, there's a lot of people who do not change. So what does that do? Constrict love? And then what does that do? What does that mean? And also, I've seen a lot of couples that end up choosing not to change because they want to stick together, when if they do change, they have so much potential like waiting to become in them, and yet they say no, 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 because this is the person I love and this is who I want to be with. And then otherwise there's conflict and it's all about something else, and suddenly, but they are going towards who they want to be, and somehow that's called a disruption or a destruction when actually they're going towards. So I don't know, I love what this is, but also it's not just all one way.
I like I can't agree more with what you just shared, Mona, because especially like how you brought in the beginning saying like, hey, it really depends on which way are we coming and looking at this thing, right? Are we coming at it from the same lens that these three psychiatrists are coming from? Because even as you read what you read, Antoine, yeah, there's some part of resistance in me as you're reading it, right? Because I'm like, okay, yeah, I can, I remember, experiencing with my aunt also dementia and Alzheimer, and there's a part that's like, okay, there's a loss of a person that you thought was always gonna be there, and then not there, and at the same time, there's this like, no, there's something still there. Now, I don't know if that's a real thing or if that's just a way in order to process what needs to happen or what's happening. But that the view, which I guess maybe I don't know if this is what they call the hard problem of consciousness of like what is first, consciousness or matter, right? The neurons are giving rise to us being who we are, or even experiencing quote unquote consciousness, or is it the other way around where there's this infinite wave of consciousness and then there's these excitation, as they call it, of Osama, Paul, Antoine, Mona, RM, Linda, all of these um, different excitations within that consciousness. And then, yeah, so it really, and I guess they call it hard problem of consciousness because like, how are you gonna know other than experiencing yourself and then having that referential point? And to add to that, I think there's a lot of new research that's happening regarding memory and regarding dementia and consciousness because that area is really fascinating, right? But it's part of even as a prompt to reflect on and to observe oneself through like, hey, am I my memories? Is that who I am? If I tomorrow I wake up and there's no memory whatsoever, is it do I still like what changes? I mean, and there's no way I don't know if that thought experiment can actually take place, but um, in some sense we can have a sense have a taste of it if we do actually forget something um, and see do we still act in the same way as if we didn't forget it or does forgetting it change the behavior, right? Um, yeah, so that's what I have to say.
You know, there is something really profound, and the fact of the matter is we all have different. We're born with different capacities, and we don't know what they are, but they are a gift. And some of us are not so well gifted. There's, some of us have inborn talents of mathematical precision or something like that. This stuff is well known. Some people are just naturally beautiful, and other people are less so. One of the most beautiful people I ever met was a guy who was born with no face. And I was in a class with him in which I was doing stand-up comedy, and he got up and he just blew everybody away by standing there and talking about why he had no face and that he had no face and that people were really terrified of him. There was this monster, and he had some surgery, but he turned out and presented in his vulnerability as standing up there. That he became one of the most loving people I've ever met. I kind of wished I could have hung around him more than I did, but there's a handicap, but he overcame that handicap in a way that is profound, and so that's so there's suffering, and we are going to suffer, and the fact of the matter is love requires humility. we're, our egos and the way we're talked and the way we socialize ourselves, that's the least thing that we learn. Humility means you're dirt. That's what humus means. It means dirt. I like to end with this litany of love, which you'll notice there are no people involved. Love leans through the veil, and my breath thins under its nearness. Love gathers the scattered hours, each moment brightens with a hidden pulse. Love bends the night toward listening, the traveler steadies inside its hush. Love presses the heart's door, the ribs widen to receive its quiet fire. Love stirs the dust around the sage. The unseen teacher steps through the stirred silence. Love lengthens the dawn's first murmur. The hinge of time loosens its passage. Love walks the corridor of remembrance, and the name glides ahead like a soft lantern. Love rests in the ache that waits. The ache answers with a trembling vow. Love circles the listener. The Barzak opens without crossing. Love touches the traveler's shadow, and the shadow brightens as if called by its origin. Love folds the world into a single breath. The breath carries the world without strain.
Oh, you are a prolific writer, my brother. Thank you for gifting us with that beautiful share. As usual, everyone here this evening, thank you so much for such wisdom and insight, such self-expression. Your presence here today, this evening, was love incarnate. Thank you so much for being with us as we journey through the general theory of love. And please be with us again in a month's time as we explore Sama.
May I
Sufism.
ask, Paul, did you write that?
Yes, he did.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I'm just copying it down, so I want to know that I know who's written it. Oh, that's gorgeous. I love it so much.
You can check out some more of his work. Well, he can share it with you, but also in our school community, he put
Okay.
beautiful things up there.
Okay.
Check it
I
out.
will. I will. That's so beautiful. Oh my God. That's yeah.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. Wait, you asked me something, Antoine? Oh, next month it'll be Sufism and Taoism. So it'll be it is one of my favorite books. Beautiful, beautiful book. I love it so much. It is quite big. So getting some maybe I don't know if we'll pick some kind of reading from that or I'll send a particular section from it. Um, but I'll try to find the whole book and we can go through it, God willing. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Osama, for your facilitation. Paul, Mona, Antoine,
RM,
you all have
Linda, who
a
was
beautiful night.
here,
Linda,
Gerald, who was here.
all the amazing folks that showed up this evening.
Thank you.
Actually, when I read that, I left the last line out, which is love holds the heart steady. The heart answers with a road that never ends. So if anything, I'd say, yeah, trust your heart. I mean, yeah, your mind's there, but if you have to choose between what your heart tells you and what your mind tells you, you can know for a fact that when your mind thinks it's going to boss the heart around, the mind's an idiot. So just
Beautiful.
I agree. I agree.
Yes.
Mine
Indeed.
hates it, but I agree.
I just mean it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you don't use your mind to get
Yeah.
clarity about stuff. But
Yeah.
as I said, I much, but I enjoy. But I wouldn't be happy if it wasn't for my heart. I mean, heart is where your happiness is.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind might be where your intelligence is. It also might be a way. I was notorious for being able to, look at people and cut to their soul and scare the hell out of them. I wasn't even know I was doing it at the time, but that's your mind, it's your mind.
And it's also like the joy we get out of this kind of intellectual stimulation that we're doing.
Exactly.
It's together.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're both. I mean, it's not, it's sort of like you need two legs to walk easily in the same way. The head and the heart need to become in some unison. That, by the way, and I'll probably bring this up next month, is I really like Itsu's treatment, but he follows a Persian writer and gives actually a version of Ibn Arabi, which is not Ibn Arabi. And I'm belong to this bizarro school that it sort of goes back to, if you go back to Ibn Arabi himself, who never systematized his thinking, because he only wrote by divine inspiration, and he claimed that everything he wrote was directed by God.
Right.
And I make no such claims, but the point being there is that there's that the people who came after Ibn Arabi synthesized him in a certain kind of way, metaphysicalized him in a way, whereas Ibn Arabi was grounded in the ecstatic experiences that were there and then and happening. Mm-hmm. And so in the same way as you come to understand what this is, you have that opportunity too. I mean, the opportunity is realizing that ecstasy, unveiling to Jal, revelation is happening. It's not just special folks like Ibn Arabi and a few other saints.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll touch deeper on that next month, so that we can all be have the same language. God willing.
Yes.
God willing.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining us.
You.
I'm about to roll out and go get some food. I haven't eaten all day. I'm hungry. Yo, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all so much. See you, Paul. See you, Sama. See you, Mona. See you, RM. Love y'all.